All right, let's do this thing. I should have all my volumes and stuff, levels and stuff figured out. What's up, everyone? Soul here. I go by Saul Good, and this is my first Ableton tutorial I've done in like a year, so I'm excited to get back into the flow of these things. Starting out with a kind of simple one. This is something that I've started doing with a bunch of my students who take lessons with me. And I got this idea from another YouTube video I saw. I'm not sure if it was like a Dan Worrell video, but yeah, someone out there has done a similar concept, but I figured that this could be helpful to break it down like this. So the main point of this video is about distortion. What is distortion? How do we use it? And the most important piece of this, I think, is giving y'all like a visual aid, like what this actually, what different types of distortion and limiting compression or whatever, not really regular compression, but limiting for sure, and actual types of distortion and clipping look like visually, what's actually happening to the audio signal, because this is something that for me was hugely helpful at one point, to kind of discover and see, and it's become apparent to me how many people don't really understand what's actually happening to the waveform, and how different types of distortion generate different harmonic patterns. So yeah, without further ado, here's what I got going on. So I have a spectral analyzer on the bottom there, and I have a control wave here, a control channel, which is just a straight sine wave. All these for right now are straight sine waves, although each one is processed with 7 decibels of gain, at least for the ones that I could do that on. With here we got a limiter, the Ableton saturator analog clip, the Ableton saturator digital clip, the glue compressor clip, saturator on medium curve, saturator on hard curve, saturator using like just a wave shaper, you know, set of parameters that I just messed around with. Ableton stock overdrive, Ableton's pedal overdrive, Ableton's pedal distortion, and then a couple of Ableton amp settings. And then I got 2 at the end here, V-clip and Rift, which are going to be taking the concepts that we're going to cover here and show you how they kind of work when you start messing with stuff in a bipolar way, which basically just means affecting the positive side of the waveform independently of the negative side of the waveform. So, okay, what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna take you through. I'm gonna try and keep this video kind of short, like under 15 minutes, and I'm gonna start out by talking about some basic concepts of like clipping and analog based distortion. I say analog based distortion because there are a lot of types of distortion. Actually, we'll get into a little bit with Rift offers some like sort of bit depth reduction and sample rate reduction types of distortion. There's also, like, if you really want to get into it, in Serum, there's like different warp modes or Vital or any wavetable synth. Like purely digital synths have other types of ways to distort signals, and I'm not really going to talk about that today. This is all analog based distortion, which for all intents and purposes all kind of works with the same general concept. Basically, and you think about like any hardware unit, like any analog unit before computers, the way that distortion works is you drive a signal using like a gain boost into the circuitry, and the circuitry has a set of resistors in the circuitry that prevents the signal from going past a certain amplitude, essentially. These devices aren't used or aren't meant to be used with like any amount of voltage or any amount of like strength electrical signal. So they cap it at a certain point, and that effect just happens naturally in like electrical conduction. Like all electrical circuits, to the best of my knowledge, have resistors. There's like really like my electrical engineering knowledge is so basic, but I'm pretty sure there's at least transistors, capacitors, and resistors if I'm not mistaken. And the point of those resistors is to regulate the flow of that current so that it doesn't just, fry the entire circuitry. However, as you start driving a signal, and remember with all sound is an alternating current, right? And so is the AC electricity that we get, like in the States, or really just, I guess, in most places, if not all places in the world. Now, in AC, alternating current just implies that there is a alternating reversal of directionality or polarity. So as viewed as like a math algorithm, which is this, sine wave here. And by the way, apologies in advance. I'm probably going to inevitably like mess up a few things in this video, because my understanding of like electrical engineering stuff is pretty basic, but I can at least cover some stuff as it pertains to sound. So you have this top part of the wave, and by the way, each of these are frozen and flattened from just like an operator sine wave. So when Ableton does that, it splits it, even if it's a mono signal, into a left and a right. You can see this zero crossing line. Actually, it's a little clear, like right there. And so both these are identical, and I'm not really adding any stereo effects on any of these. So in each one of these channels, the left and right should be identical. They're all mono signals. So you see this zero crossing line right here. On the top half of this wave right here, we have the positive part of the waveform. And on the bottom half, we have the negative part of the waveform. So I guess the easiest way is to kind of start going through this and showing you what's going on. Let's start with like basic clipping. That's sort of like the simplest version of this. Ableton has 3 native ways, to the best of my knowledge, to just straight clip signals. There's the analog clip mode in saturator, which, by the way, when you pull in a saturator in Ableton, by default, it's not technically acting as a saturator. It's technically acting as an analog clip. We can get into the semantics of how those things differ. I think saturation is basically distortion plus compression, but it still uses the same concepts as clipping. However, clipping as a concept is really something that is like the concept of clipping a signal and getting like a perfectly straight line across the top when you clip it. To the best of my knowledge, is something that really only exists in the digital world. In the real world, there's no perfect anything, right? So that's why, analog synths, you don't really get like perfect sine waves generated. Nothing. I mean, even square and saw waves aren't like perfect. There's always some, kind of variables, and we don't really have like a straight line clip. So I'll get into this in a little bit when we get into the overdrive units and kind of more classic types of distortion. But basically what's happening here is, as we, you know what, here, I'm going to do this really quick so we can kind of come back to this. I am going to pull all those down. I'm going to make a duplicate of all of these, and I'm going to make these a different color. So I will freeze and flatten these, and I'll go back to reference them later on. So let me go through here, open these back up. I'm going to freeze and flatten, and then we can come back and reference. So, and by the way, I definitely encourage you to run this experiment yourself, and you can play with stuff all day long. So here is that original control sine wave right here. I'll put this as yellow 2. All right, so here's our original control sine wave, right? Now with that analog clip, let me go through here, and I'll open them up as needed. So with that analog clip, if you actually look at this box down here, and apologies for this stuff being so slow. Actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and zoom this in just like a little bit for y'all. Yeah, that should be like a little bit better just for being able to see stuff. All right, so we have this sine wave, and what's happening is you're just driving the gain, right? So it's, sorry, I'm gonna go to this one here. Right now, by the way, I have these all just set at 10 decibels. Whatever they are, they're basically hitting 0, like the theoretical ceiling. So the 7 decibels that I added to each of these is should be relatively consistent until we get into like the more classic units, which don't have like a standard just like decibel amount that you can crank them up. So I have this sine wave. What's happening is we're basically just taking the gain and pushing this up 7 decibels on these first ones I'm going to go through. So as you can see now, this shape pretty much matches this shape down here, except that here it's actually clipped off at the top. So rather than going past it, where, I mean, I can always pull this back down until this gets final exported and clipped. You can always, you know, clip it and then bring it back down. It's not technically being clipped, although it would cause, you know, the meter to turn red like it is clipping. But because Ableton uses like a 32-bit floating point, there's no actual clipping inside the software. It's just theoretical clipping that will turn into a digitally clipped signal on Ableton's export. So what we got is, as soon as I pull this up, you see how it starts to kind of look like this right here. So when I add 7 decibels of gain, actually I think this is right there. Let me go to 17, mess that up. All right, cool. So that's basically what this looks like. This is with the analog clip mode, and I'll pull this up so you can see that kind of curve right there is literally what's happening to this signal. Actually, if I get the zoom kind of just right, you'll kind of see that this part of the wave right here literally looks like the curve right here on this analog clip mode. Now, if we go to digital clip, and let me go to our reference digital clip, you can see that that is literally what's happening to the wave. There's no curve at all. It's just a hardline clip. Like, it's literally this one, if it didn't go past the cutoff point, like past that 0 decibel, you know, theoretical ceiling, and just literally took a pair of scissors or a knife and just cut straight across, and you have this completely flat line clip point with a hard angle right there. So that is the saturator, Ableton's native saturator on analog clip mode and digital clip mode. So next up, the third way that we have native in Ableton to clip a signal, clip a waveform, is in glue compressor. And so here, let me actually, I'll open these up one at a time so we can kind of see everything. So let me pop this open and pop the glue compressor down here. So we'll always have the control open, and let me put this back to a sine wave, or, you know, it is a sine wave, but cool. So with this glue compressor, now glue compressor doesn't, the makeup gain is part of the actual compression module, and so I'm running this at 0% dry wet, so no actual compression is taking place, but I do have soft clip turned on, and I'm just cranking the volume, the level 7 decibels with a utility before it. So the glue compressor is a little bit different than the analog and the digital clip in saturator, in that it is a much more aggressive curve than the analog clip, but it's not quite digital. So if I even pull these, all 3 of these kind of a little more like that, you can see it a little more pronounced. So here you have that perfect kind of hard angle, and here you have a little bit of a curve. But it's a lot more aggressive of a curve than the analog clip. So I like the glue compressor personally. I think it produces a really nice tone. The digital clip can produce some kind of like very digital sounding artifacts. The analog clip can be a little bit soft for my tastes. And now it's kind of like, when it comes to transparency, there's a couple things to kind of keep in mind here, which is that as you're clipping more complex waveforms than just a 40 hertz-ish sine wave, you'll have a lot of, you know, there'll be a lot more complexity to this waveform, right? And anything that is getting clipped there, it's sort of funny because in some ways, a digital clip, like a hardline digital clip, is the most transparent way to clip, because it won't produce any distortion in the waveform until it gets to that point. Whereas with an analog clip or a softer knee, it'll actually start, you'll start distorting the waveform a little bit before it hits that actual clip point. So more time, like more a bigger period of each of the wave cycles will actually be distorted. However, softening that knee does provide you with a little bit of like kind of softness, for lack of a better word, to the signal itself. So I'll play through these, what they sound like, by the way, real quick. So again, just our control, which is just a straight sine wave, is all right. And you can kind of see down here that it's just that straight, I think it's like a D sharp E flat, so it's like 38.89 hertz. Just the single frequency. All right, so when we put it into the analog clip in Saturator, we get this. And you'll notice that this actually produces all odd harmonics, because pretty much, and my knowledge is honestly a little bit weak on this, but from my understanding, anything that is symmetrical across the top of the waveform and the bottom, for the most part, produces odd harmonics only. Like a square wave, if you actually, let me just go off on a quick little tangent here. Actually, let me just take this operator, duplicate this out, and put this on a square wave. Square, and freeze that. All right, flatten that, and pop this up really big. So when you make a square wave, like in any soft synth basically, or hardware synth, it's an infinite series of harmonics, right? So it's technically made up of an infinite series of sine waves. So it's not a perfect square. As you start to actually zoom in, you can see that that is what is happening here. I think that is as zoomed as we can get. But yeah, so go on the Wikipedia page for just basic waveforms and look up stuff about like the Fourier transform, and you'll see a bunch of kind of helpful graphics of how adding infinite series of certain harmonics, in this case all odd harmonics, gets you closer and closer to a square wave until you have basically what we consider as like almost a perfect square wave, or as close to the idea of it as you can get. So, sorry, quick little tangent. Here is the sine wave again with 7 decibels of gain on the analog clip in Ableton Saturator. And here it is with the digital clip. So you can see here it's a lot like kind of bitier in the top end. It's a lot like harsher in those top frequencies, or just brighter. And the glue compressor clip, kind of in between the two, right? Cool. All right, so Ableton's limiter and most limiters, their whole job is to use a look ahead time to process the signal and add sort of a brick wall type compression, where it's squashing the part of the signal that's going over the ceiling or the threshold that you've set back down to that ceiling or threshold, and trying to do so in as transparent of a way as possible. So on this limiter, I also had it cranked 7, and here is what the limiter looks like. Did I not do that one? Let's do this here. Whoop. Let me just quickly throw that in, freeze and flatten that. All right, so as you can see here, and let me pull these back down so they're not like so obnoxious and in the way. Cool. And all right, so as you can see here, adding 7 decibels of gain, this is how Ableton's stock limiter handles it. It's really trying its best to mimic the sine wave, or keep the sine wave as transparent as possible. So here's what that sounds like. And again, the regular sine wave, just the single frequency. So the limiter is like, you know, it does a pretty good job. It's really trying to crank that. And by the way, you'll see that the line right here, like this part of the sine wave, when you increase the gain or the level or the drive, those are all, you know, kind of interchangeable for this particular scenario. As I push this volume up, that line gets steeper. So that is what you're seeing here. Like if I pull this up to +7 again, you'll see that it's really trying its best to mimic that part right there. Although in order to keep it more like a sine wave, it really has to kind of start acting pretty much on all parts of the waveform. Cool, so I'll pull this back down. Okay, so next we got saturators, medium curve, hard curve. Let me pull these up just so you can remember what those look like here. So medium curve, the difference between analog clip and medium curve, you can kind of see how that line I was just talking about, like as it goes over the zero crossing, becomes steeper here. So on this one, I didn't add the 7 decibels of drive because the medium curve option in saturator is already adding drive to the wave. I think it's like, I did this before, and I think it's like around like 7 or maybe like 10. Actually, we can just pull this up right here. It looks like it is basically about, let's see, what did I do here? 7. It looks pretty close. So I think it's adding basically like about maybe let's try like 6 extra. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. So yeah, it's basically adding like 6 decibels of gain without you even having to do anything. And that's kind of that is kind of true saturation. Like I was saying before, how the analog clip and the digital clip in Ableton's native saturator isn't like true saturation. Oh God, I'm already at 20 minutes. All right, so this video is gonna go a little longer than I was hoping. That's fine. The thing about true saturation is it's kind of already adding gain without you even doing anything to it. So, and as you go up into hard curve, you see that that's just making that line even steeper. All that's kind of telling you is that it's adding even more gain. The curve also is a little bit different, but it's the curve you get added into the fact that you're getting an amount of gain without even touching the drive knob. So with the hard curve, we'll go to this one. I tested this before, and I think that it's pretty close to like 20. I know, like with a lot of kind of some analog distortion units, they have like especially like kind of crazier ones, like more aggressive ones, have like a floor of 20 decibels added. So I think that's basically what we're getting here. Let me put this up to like third. That would put us at 30, which I can't quite do, but I think you can kind of see that at 14 extra, it's still not steep enough. So yeah, I think it's like adding about 20 decibels of gain, the hard curve, without you, again, having to do anything to it. All right, cool. So moving on, let me put this back to our control and fold those both back in. All right, so now we got overdrive, and pedal distortion. So these are modeled after some more classic types of distortion. Let me go down here and open up these 3. All right, so as you can see, the signal is a little bit different here. And by the way, when the signal runs through these, a lot of times, especially because there's filtering going on, like in the overdrive that we got here, you'll see that there is an EQ filter, kind of the same thing when you think about it. So there's an EQ, there's some filtering going on here, and because of that, there is some natural phase offset that's happening. So if I take this signal and I just slide it over to, well, let's just line it up more like there. So you can see right here is where the zero crossing point happens. So that's basically the part of the signal after all the gain that's been added by the overdrive device is more or less still doing what the original sine wave, the control sine wave would do. Or let me go to this one. If I were to, whoa, not that, let's do this one, crank it up that much. You see now that angle, like right there, is what's happening literally right there, but all the rest has been shoved back down by this sort of clip principle. However, like I was saying before, in the analog world and like any like kind of guitar pedal overdrive or you know, like tube distortion or just distortion units you have in like amps, like any analog type of distortion usually has a more kind of unique characteristic shape. In other words, it's not just a flat cutoff point at the top. So, and that's because, you know, think about as the signal is running through the circuitry, it's like it comes into contact with the different set of resistors, and they're kind of interacting in a very fluid motion that sort of gives, like, again, not a flat cutoff point, but some ebb and flow to it. So this is a very classic like overdrive shape that we have. And I'll make this a little bigger so you can just kind of see what's going on there. So that is what that looks like. And oh, and by the way, we didn't play through these. So let me back up 2 seconds. Medium curve, just to kind of give you an audio sample of each of these. All right, and hard curve. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that like really high pitched tone. That could be like just some aliasing or something that's happening, but it may not come through in the video too. So that's the hard curve. And again, that's basically just that sine wave with 20 decibels of gain added, and then like a nice kind of hefty curve to it, soft knee. All right, so back to this overdrive. Let's give an audio sample for that. Cool, and you can see, by the way, with each of the ones up to this point, with each of those curves, you're getting all odd harmonics. Like if we go back and play this, the hard curve, all odd harmonics, right? The first, the third, the fifth, the seventh, the ninth, the 11th, etc. Now, for the first time, we're getting into something that is not symmetrical over the top and bottom. And by the way, if you, if you haven't watched some of my other videos and don't fully get the whole harmonic series, just for the purposes of this, a square wave and a triangle wave will both produce odd harmonics. A square wave, for the record, is each harmonic drops off at an amplitude of 6 decibels, I believe. And then with a triangle wave, it's all odd harmonics, except that each next harmonic, like the third, the fifth, seventh, each drops by an amplitude of 12 decibels. With a saw wave, you get all harmonics, so the entire harmonic series, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. And each one drops off at a rate of 6 decibels, I believe. Again, if you just go to like the Wikipedia page for basic waves, waveforms, it'll kind of run through some of this. I definitely recommend just kind of reading up on it, because it definitely does help your understanding of kind of sound design and synthesis in general. So let me just freeze that and flatten it, so we can get like a visual here. All right, so nice saw wave. It is not symmetrical over the top and bottom, right? And so when we play it, you get all harmonics. So going back to these guys, overdrive. Now we're starting to get some of those even order harmonics as well. Granted, the odd ones are still a little higher up, and you usually do get that with any type of like analog-based distortion, more often than not. Although in some of these examples, we will show you where you don't. But you do now get some of those even order harmonics too, the second, the fourth, the sixth, etc. So this is the pedal. And by the way, just while I'm on this, the settings I had for the overdrive, I just put the drive up like 77%, 100% wet, and left this filter all the way basically as open as it can get. So, all right, so let's go to pedal overdrive. So same general concept. It's an overdrive, but it's just a different algorithm in Ableton's pedal. So that one looks like this, and here are the settings I had. You can see down here on overdrive mode, gain at 68%, output at 0, and dry wet 100. The reason I didn't do 7 decibels on this is because the gain is already adding gain, so quite a bit too. So on this, let me crank this up a little bit just for visibility. So again, you can kind of see that is where the 0 crossing, kind of like that line that would go across, happens, and this is the shape that you get. Let me slide this over too a little bit so it's really like there. Yeah, cool. All right, moving on to pedal distortion. Put this up a little bit so we can see. So this is getting a little more squarish, and so this might go back to just having odd harmonics. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if I played a sample for this pedal overdrive, but there you go. Yeah, so this one is actually also all odd harmonics. So again, like I said, my understanding isn't like completely it's not complete on why certain shapes produce odd harmonics versus even and odd, but yeah. Going on to this one. Whoops. So that is getting pretty close to just like what a square wave sounds like. I think we got one right here. So this one's obviously brighter because it's pushed to the max, has all those harmonics all the way through. This one has a little bit steeper of a drop off in those kind of top order harmonics in the higher realm. Yep. So nice and crunchy. And for that one, the parameters are here. So I just have it on distort mode, basically the same as the other one. All right, so let's close those up and go to the amps. So these get a little funky. The amp just has different algorithms for each thing. Some of these I don't even really understand what's going on, but it's helpful just to kind of see, I think. So for the blues amp, which by the way is here, right here, I just have this, I think, on just completely stock settings, and put it on blues algorithm, and it sounds like this. Cool, and it's pretty crunchy up in the top, but you also get those even order harmonics too, so it's a little bit fuller sounding, kind of like a saw wave. Amp on boost mode. Now this is starting to kind of drastically sort of cut that low, like, fundamental frequency. Same with this one too. You can kind of even just see it. Like all these, everything that we've done so far, has this kind of original, like, period, like this wave. When I say period, I mean like the length of time that it takes to kind of complete a wave cycle. You can see that that's kind of still intact in each of these, like, even though there's a lot of kind of little bits and pieces and higher frequency harmonics that are represented in here, you still get this overall shape that still kind of lines up with this original waveform. So you can kind of just see by looking at the waveform that low 38.89 hertz frequency is still represented in there, until we get to these guys here. Now it's a lot tougher to see. Like, even if I pull this up a little bit, it's there. You can see that something happens and repeats that often, which is the same as that often, but it's definitely a lot less clear, and that's just because that 40 hertz fundamental frequency, 38.9 hertz fundamental frequency, has been significantly reduced in the process of this distortion. And then same with this one here on the lead algorithm. Cool. So the last couple ones I wanted to go over is V-clip and Rift. Actually, I'm not going to use those as much as I'm going to use the ones in the actual reference ones so that I can kind of play around with them in real time. And something I think I actually didn't quite go into a lot, which I will quickly before going into the bipolar stuff, is saturator on wave shaper mode. So I love Ableton Saturator. Honestly, I think it's great. It does a lot. Wave shaper mode especially is where you can get like the most kind of unique and customizable tone shaping going on. Something to note, by the way, about this soft clip. It'll tell you right if you look on the side on the little info panel. But what soft clip does in Saturator is add it says right there, a separate instance of the analog clip curve to Saturator's output. So if you go to do, like, for instance, a digital clip on Saturator, and then you turn on this soft clip, you'll kind of be undoing what happens in the digital. Not exactly, because it's really just adding another layer on, but you won't get a final waveform that is hard cut. You'll get a softer knee at the end. So that's why I left it off. Saturator, Ableton Saturator will in fact still clip the signal on analog clip mode or digital clip mode, or medium curve, hard curve, whatever, without soft clip on. The only one that it will not do that on is Wave Shaper, and you can actually see that here where it's not clipped. It goes off the screen just like it does when I pull this up, So let me grab a sip of water really quick. So with Ableton's Wave Shaper, let me just kind of solo this and play around with this for a second. This is what we got here with kind of a gentle curve, damp, and depth. As I sort of move this around, make it more aggressive. Again, you should be able to figure out at this point, this is kind of what the signal is actually going to be represented after. Like if I put it back here and we open up the resulting waveform, let me pull these out there. So you can literally see right here, right there, that is literally what this looks like in here. So you really are getting, in this little preview window, like a pretty accurate depiction of what is going to happen to the resulting waveform. Now the damp and the curve and the period will all kind of do certain things to like add certain filtering in. There's already a filter kind of in here as well, which is what this frequency and the width is. The width is just the like how narrow or not the band is, and the frequency is like where that is going to be set. The curve, everything else on here just adds, you know, as I play through this and I adjust the curve, you see that higher frequencies get added. And you can literally see those higher frequencies being added in real time in this preview here. And then the depth, all that just kind of changes that around. So, and like if I were to take this and let's actually take the period down. The period adds some like really high frequency stuff, which can be useful for certain things. For this, I'll kind of bring it down there and I'll do the depth at 100 and yeah, no damp. And yeah, I'll just make like a really gnarly curve like that. If we freeze and flatten this, now actually let me duplicate this so we still have that in case we want to go back to it. You'll see that it looks exactly, plus it has the soft clip enabled, so it's still giving that, it's still going to clip it. You'll see that it literally still right here matches exactly what it's showing you in there. So yeah, play around with Wave Shaper if you haven't in Ableton. It's a great tool. All right, on to the bipolar stuff. Let's see, you can get rid of all those and okay, yeah, V-clip and Rift. All right, so I'm gonna start with V-clip because V-clip will kind of tie this whole thing together. Oh man, almost at 40 minutes. That's all right. Audio stuff is kind of hard to do quickly, I guess, especially for me. All right, so let me see if this window will get bigger. Nope, it will not. Okay, so in V-clip, V-clip's like a $30 plugin from Ven Audio. I really like it. I have got too many clippers to name at this point. K-clip, Newfangled Saturate, and Sir Audio's standard clip. And honestly, the only ones that I use are V-clip when I want just kind of like a standard clip or a bipolar clip that's really like easy to work with. And then Newfangled Saturate, because Newfangled Saturate does something a little different than other clippers where it has sort of an algorithm that lets certain high frequencies still come through that would otherwise get clipped out. So with V-clip, if you go into custom shape, like I think by here, let me actually just pull one on here. So by default, it just looks like this. It just looks like any other clipper. Let me turn this off and kind of show you that. So as I play the signal, I really like the UI in V-clip because as I adjust the input, it literally shows where the signal is, and as it starts to kind of clip, and you can kind of see this is where it's not clipping at all, still just a sine wave. You can see that in the bottom of the screen right here on the spectrum analyzer. And then as it starts to distort, you see those harmonics kind of come up. So this is where I can adjust the knee, so I can go as soft as I want, or hard clip digital, which is, again, there'll be no distortion until I literally hit that point right there. And then it's just a very kind of solid digital clip. And then you also have the ability to just adjust the ceiling. If you don't want to kind of put the gain up so much, you can kind of bring the ceiling to you. Cool. So if you go into complex shapes custom, so here's where we can start adjusting stuff in a bipolar way. Again, meaning the positive half of the waveform independently of the negative half of the waveform. So off the bat, we have two variable soft knees. You have a ceiling right here. So if I put that just at 1, there's the sine wave. And if I pull this down, you can literally, let me pull this out so we can kind of, there we go. So now you can see the whole waveform. So as I pull that down, oh, and let me turn off the DC filter. So as I pull that down, you can see exactly what is happening, but it's only happening on the top half. I can independently adjust it on the bottom. And if we just put the ceiling all the way to the bottom of both, the signal just disappears, right? Because this is, we're actually messing with the amplitude of the signal, right? So let me put this back up so it's just sine wave again. And now we can kind of start playing with some different shapes, like foldback is a very common shape you see in kind of classic like distortion units. So, and that's literally what that's going to look like. And I think that's actually what I did here. And you can see the resulting waveform. Right? That's kind of a nice beefy signal too. Got a lot of info in that sort of like lower region. It has kind of high amplitude, even order harmonics, the second, fourth, sixth as well. Going back in here, and so if we want to do that, and then go to like, I don't know, algebraic on this one, I don't even know what that does. And so DC, just since I had to turn it off, I'll explain it really quick. DC is direct current, right? So it's not alternating. It doesn't have like a positive and then a negative for each wave. It's not a wave at all, in fact. DC gets introduced into hardware because it's electricity. And basically what that means is like the entire signal will sort of slide off the zero crossing a little bit. Actually, I think I have... let me just pop open a new audio track in here, and I think I have like some bass samples and stuff with a lot of heavy processing where you can kind of see this happen. Let's see. No, these are all so heavily clipped that it's kind of maybe something in here. Let's see. Oh, I know I gotta have something good in here. Let's go back into... All right, well, I'll see if I can get this to, if this kind of looks. So, not really, but let's see. Nope, that's really not a great example. Let me take like a, just like find like a thing in here. Let's see. Yeah, none of these really have it, but basically, you would see the entire bit of the waveform kind of be shifted on like kind of above or below the zero crossing. And that can kind of just like affect the kind of weight of your signal a little bit. So most like a lot of distortion plugins give you the option to kind of have a DC filter, which kind of registers how much direct current there is, like how off of the zero crossing it is, and kind of pushes it back on. However, it uses filtering to do so. So you might have noticed in the past that in Ableton's saturator, there is a DC filter, and in Ableton's utility, there is a DC filter. DC right here, and DC here. They work slightly differently. One of them, I forget which one offhand, significantly like reduces the amount of low end, like low frequencies. Actually, I think it might from audio material that contains them. This is at the input stage here on the saturator, so it's a pre-DC. And for the utility, this is this filters out DC offsets and extremely low frequencies. Yeah, I tried explaining this to a student recently. Really low frequencies, like 1 hertz, 2 hertz, right? If you take that amount of space, like let's just highlight like 1 full second. So we're at 400 milliseconds. And by the way, when you highlight an amount of space, you can see in the very bottom left corner, on the very bottom of the screen, it'll tell you how much if you hover over it. So 1 second is about right there. So let's say this oscillates, you have a 1 hertz wave. That means that for half of this period of time, like about that much space, 500 milliseconds, this whole part of the wave is going to be shifted north of, on the positive side of the zero crossing. So for all intents and purposes, it's kind of having the same effect as a direct current. because if you take a small enough glimpse of time, it essentially is a direct current, right? Because it's only on one half of the positive. You haven't gone enough time for it to swing back over the other side of the zero crossing. So if you have very, very low frequencies that get mixed into your audio, it can kind of have that same effect. The utility filters out DC and very low frequencies. So one of these, I think, has a pretty drastic effect on your low frequencies, like in your sub bass. I don't really turn them on too often. But in the course of crazy experimental sound design, every now and again, I've played with them just to like see how it affects signal if I'm noticing them getting some of that DC offset. All right, so back to the task at hand here. Let me go back to this. So yeah, let's see. So that's not the one. Is that the one? Yeah. All right, so anyway, we got fullback, algebraic. You can literally see how it's affecting the shape right there. And let's see. Yeah, so I use this a lot just to get different weird shapes on stuff. And that is essentially what Rift is doing as well. So I have Rift pulled open too. Same kind of thing. You have, this is on the positive. It tells you right there, positive shape, negative shape. So in this case, I have soft clip. So as I pull this down, you're going to see it just get soft clip. And on the bottom, I have like a harmonic shape, which is going to do something like that. So you pop this open. So again, just full waveform there. Well, except it's already adding 3 decibels of gain. So let's put this on 0. Basically just sine wave, except it's not. It's still doing a little something. And I'm not sure what. Oh, 2 times maybe. Yep. Blend. Yeah, I don't know exactly, hard, smooth. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's doing there. It shouldn't really be, but it's still doing something to it. So you're getting a little bit of those harmonics there, which you can see kind of down here. Anyway, if I pull this up, you kind of start to get that soft knee clip. If I pull this one up, you can see what's happening there as well. And then you have a bunch of different, you know, like I was saying before, in Rift, one cool thing about it is you get all these different sort of shapes that you don't necessarily get in V-Clip. Like here's one. And you'll notice that these all have like digital connotations. Like if you think about how bit depth is, and the reason, like this is technically made up of a bunch of distinct points, right? If you reduce that, now you get this kind of stair-steppy sort of thing as you start to reduce it. So... And you can get some really, really, really cool stuff, very like digital sounding stuff, but very cool digital sounding stuff like that. So, and same with sample rate. If I go to, yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. It's a little different. We're not reducing the amount of bits, but rather how many samples you get in a section. So rather than just getting like an evenly distributed kind of stair-steppiness that gets more and more stair-steppy as you increase it, instead you're going to get something that kind of is more relative to time. Cool. So anyway, that's it. That's the demo for you. Hope you guys got something out of that. And I'm going to start trying to put these videos out once a week and hopefully get better at making them a little shorter. So let me know if you have any like questions, comments, concerns in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, I guess, and if you feel like it. And let me know if there's specific topics you want to see covered as well. And yeah, I guess it should be noted too that in the course of all this, distortion is great. Distortion is our friend. All kind of analog-based distortion models essentially give you an infinite series of harmonics one way or another. However, since all sounds are just made up of different sort of harmonic patterns, the entire world of sound is sort of at your fingertips when we're talking about synthesis. Like everything I've done here is just based off of a sine wave, right? So when you start applying these sorts of shapes to already complex waveforms, like things that aren't just a sine wave, whether it's just a harmonically rich sine wave, or if it's a totally complex shape, or if it's a guitar or a violin or any other sample, you start getting some really, really crazy stuff. So yeah, happy distorting and happy sound designing to y'all, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.